I'm going to talk about game audio. And the reason I moved to Canada, by the way, was because I was tired of doing the LA thing, because I was doing that for like 4 or 5 years, and I decided I'd go up to Canada. And the reason I moved back to Texas was because after 3 Canadian winters, I just refused to do 4. And so I'm back, and yeah, I'm an audio director and sound designer and composer and writer, and somewhere along the way I got involved in writing and designing and biz dev and other stuff in games. So I think it's my ADD, but I'm kind of all over the place, and I'm working with Alex Brandon and in the middle of launching my own studio called Headrush Games. So anyway, today I am going to talk about game audio in 2012 and what it means. The end is just the beginning. Very ominous and vague language, but basically what that means is audio in video games, similar to most media, comes at the end of a complex cascade of dependencies. And really, when other people are kind of done with their work and they get to put the brush down and walk away, that's a point where audio guys are basically picking it up and putting the final touches on work that's been ongoing, hopefully ongoing organically alongside the other disciplines. So the end is just the beginning for the audio guys who get stuff at the end and begin to polish their work. Let's see, yes, this is my disclaimer, courtesy Frank Zappa. You know, I'm gonna be speaking in abstracts here because I'm not actually presenting any audio content, and so I'll be talking about sound and music, which is a bit like dancing about architecture. But we'll make the best of it. So, game audio in 2012, what is it? It's big. It's tough. It's awesome. It's a pretty big deal these days to make sound for games because I'm going to focus mostly here on the frontline AAA kind of games. The frontline games that kind of showcase the biggest and the baddest of what's possible in our industry right now typically have team sizes for audio between 5 and 12, sometimes more. And that might come as a shock to a lot of producers, and that's kind of the point of my whole talk here is I know that there's some catching up that some people should be doing in learning more about the state of where things are and what's possible within game audio and how to better plan for it and schedule for it and do your resource planning around quality. I can help you with that with a few of these facts. Basically, if you want something good, you got to pay for it, right? So if you have a large project, and by large I mean number of sound assets over 1,500 unique sound effects or whatever, you've got to be careful with your resource planning if you want good quality. And today, quality is more important than ever for audio because in this iTunes connected kind of generation of people walking around listening to music and watching HD films constantly, the expectations are just higher. So you've got to make sure that you cover the bases if you want a good experience. And let's face it, in an audio visual experience, audio is pretty big. 3 to 4 hours per sound is a good benchmark for producers to do your planning. I find that at the end of the day, regardless of the pipeline and how streamlined or wonky it is, and between all the meetings and emails and back and forth and incorporating feedback and this guy broke my work and the publisher wants us to do this demo that we didn't plan for and everything else, it ends up being somewhere between 3 and 4 hours per sound effect. So up front, if you're looking at your design and you have your documents up for your signs and feedback and for the story and campaign modes of the game and the things that you want, for every sound effect you want in the game, budget 3 to 4 hours of time for your sound team. And if you don't have a big enough team to cover that, then start making tough choices of whether you want the game to sound good or good enough or meh. And meh still ships. But it's not great. Dedicated roles for specialization is something that's becoming more prevalent because games are getting, again, big in terms of audio. We've seen new roles come up in the last couple of years. When I was up at Ubisoft working on Assassin's Creed Brotherhood and Prince of Persia and Power Up Heroes and a few things, basically there are new roles developing there in other companies, such as dialogue director, somebody whose full-time job, locally I know we know this already with Star Wars shipping, that someone's got to just own that and that's their jam and that's all they do. And the game doesn't even have to be as big as the Star Wars game is in terms of dialogue and VO to have that role. It just makes sense for a big team. Audio artist is something that's kind of new and exciting too, because really, what happened is back in the day, 20 years ago, whatever, some programmer on the team played guitar, he became the guy that did the sounds for the game. And now, you have a guy that's like R2-D2, and he's really good under the hood and technical, and he knows how to do scripting and this and that, and he's your integrator, and he's awesome, but he just does not have the ear, which is something you can't really teach. And so you got to have that guy that's got the ear and is not technical and does not know how to do that stuff, but is an awesome audio artist, and he's going to shape and mold those believable Hollywood treatment style sound effects, hand them off to the integrator, and get them in. Occasionally you get a rock star that can do both, but it's kind of been accepted at a lot of larger studios that that's a tough thing to find, and so you might be better off looking for a dedicated audio artist and then somebody to be his technical counterpart. Game audio is Texas tough. It's everywhere in the game. Everything you do, everywhere you go, from the front menu to the character foley to the dialogue that tells the story to the sound effects that drive the action and the signs and feedback that tell you there's a monster around that corner or you're on a killing spree. Audio is everywhere in the game. And so to put audio everywhere in the game, you've got to have a working knowledge of the tools. Your audio guy, believe it or not, probably knows more about the tools than an animator or an effects guy or a lot of the people on the team. You know why? Because every one of those other guys can break his work. And so the audio guy has to know a little bit about how the animators work so they can track down why the sounds aren't playing on this updated animation. The audio guy has to know a little bit about how the effects guys work and what their pipeline and flow is, because they just updated their effects particles and now, the fire doesn't make noise anymore. So the audio guys, believe it or not, they kind of have to crawl around everywhere to do their job, and they know a little bit more than you might expect about what's happening under the hood of your game. The work may be redone several times. Any audio guy who complains about redoing their work is either junior or in denial, because it's just going to happen. You are going to have to redo your work. You're going to have to redo it not once, not twice, but probably 3 or 4 times before the end of a game. And that's if your pipeline is awesomely smooth. It's just a cold hard fact. And it makes sense because, again, we're at the end. An animation gets made, we put sound on it so that we can see it and feel it and have it in context and very visceral, like April was saying earlier. But then we want to change the speed of that wing flap, or we want to change the rate of that walk and that walk cycle, and so audio's got to redo their work. So it's a little tough, but you get used to it. Game audio is dynamic and not linear. When you make a movie, and I think this is in another slide because it's just such a big deal to me. When you make a movie, you make it once, it's cut, it's done, you slap the audio in, and it plays back the same way every time. When you make a game, you're making a game experience with several possible outcomes to every single scene and scenario, and you have to take those into account in a 3D space. So it's tough. This is what I already talked about, I guess. The audio for movies comes at the end, and in games it's required in stages. You have milestone hoops to jump through and deliveries and the E3 demo and this demo and that demo, and I've got 1 minute, so I'm going to get my Micro Machines voice on and talk faster. Movies always sound the same. Games have multiple outcomes. Yes, covered that. Yes, covered that. Texas is awesome. Yeah. Thank you and good night. No, and so is game audio. It's awesome because it's a huge part of the experience. It's the emotional layer. It's used as gameplay. I remember years ago hearing an unnamed executive during a pitch that I was in on say, "Nobody wants to play guitar. Are you insane?" The future is now. The future is now. There's more interest in audio-driven gameplay. There's more demand for high quality. There are better tools coming online that kind of mimic the flow of Hollywood film production, but take the best parts of that 100 years of experience and kind of slowly porting it over. Because for years, audio tools and games were driven, again, by programmers and guys who did not really understand that there was 100 years of history and context behind making, and shaping sounds for media. There are specialized personnel who know the trails, use them. It's still the biggest bang for your production buck. Your audio team is small and lean and tight, and they bring so much to your production. Give them the extra $5. Audio should be represented on the core team in an ideal situation. Integrate them early and have their expertise and experience. Again, they know more than you think, and they have ideas from the audio side that can help bring a lot to your gameplay. Design-driven tools, we're almost there. There's a lot of stuff, like I said, coming in that's very exciting now. I'm trying to rush because I've been over my 10 minutes. Finding ways to balance the downtime. This is the big challenge with game audio because your game audio guys are not always needed. They're waiting a lot. This is how I got involved in business development and buying and selling games and being in on pitches and doing design stuff and studio management and other things because I wanted to justify my paycheck because I was waiting for a lot of stuff to happen and I didn't want to sit on my hands. I want to be productive for my team. So that can be a challenge, keep it in mind. And what's needed is we need some audio savvy among more producers. We need more people like April who understand the visceral impact and effect of game audio. And that, I think, is it for me. Is it? Yes, it is. Thanks, y'all.